12 years of silence shattered not by an apology, but by a desperate knock on her multi-million-dollar door, the door I never expected to open. The scent of salt and silence was my new liturgy. Each morning I would stand at the wide glass doors of my sunroom, a cup of steaming black coffee warming my palms, and watch the Atlantic perform its eternal, indifferent ballet. The house, my house, was a symphony of quiet. Pale oak floors, walls the color of sea-washed shells, furniture chosen for comfort and line, not to accommodate the imagined needs of guests who never came. It was a sanctuary built not from stone and mortar, but from 12 years of a specific, hollowing solitude. 12 years, 4,380 days since my daughter, Maya, had last looked at me with anything resembling warmth. The final scene was etched in a cold corner of my memory, playing on a loop during my weakest moments. A cramped Italian restaurant, the air thick with garlic and unspoken grievances. Raj, her then fiancé, had sat beside her, a silent, uncomfortable sentinel. I had been prattling on, trying to bridge a widening gap with the cheerful, desperate chatter I'd perfected since her father left, planning a potential wedding menu, offering to pay for a dress, suggesting, always too much. Maya had set her fork down with a precise, final click. Her eyes, the same hazel as my own but hardened with a resolve I didn't recognize, met mine. "Mom," she'd said, her voice low and strained. "You're suffocating us. We need space. You're too much." The words weren't shouted, which made them worse. They were a clinical diagnosis. Too much. A terminal condition of the personality. Roggs had looked at his plate. I had felt the world tilt. The chatter of the restaurant receding into a high-pitched whine. I nodded, muttered something about understanding, paid the bill, and walked out into a city that had suddenly lost all its color. The door didn't just close. It was sealed shut. There were no blistering fights, no dramatic proclamations of disownment. It was a passive surgical removal. Invitations to birthdays, holidays, their eventual wedding, and the births of my 2 grandchildren, Leo and Anya, never arrived. My calls went unanswered, then eventually to a disconnected number. My letters, carefully crafted parcels of love and apology, were returned unopened, returned to sender, stamped on them like a verdict. The silence was absolute, a vacuum that swallowed my attempts at connection whole. The first year was a blur of gray pain. I lived in the ghost of our old apartment, every corner haunted by the echo of a teenage Maya's laughter, the slam of her door during an argument, the smell of her apple-scented shampoo. I worked my thankless job as a receptionist at a dental clinic, fielding calls about root canals and insurance, my own life feeling like a slow moral decay. The grief was a physical weight, a lodestone on my heart. But survival, I learned, is a stubborn instinct. One rain-lashed Tuesday, after another returned letter, I looked at my hands, capable hands that had held a child, cooked 1,000 meals, smoothed sheets, and felt a spark of anger. It was a clean, sharp emotion, cutting through the fog of sorrow. If I was to be alone, I would not be pathetic. I would not be a ghost in my own life. The rebuild began in increments. Each small action a brick in a fragile new foundation. I left the apartment, moved to a studio that held no memories. I enrolled in night classes at the community college first, a business seminar, then a course in gemology. My fingers, restless with the need to create rather than just endure, remembered a childhood love for beading. I started making necklaces, earrings, bracelets, intricate, whimsical pieces inspired by Art Deco geometry and the organic flow of vines. I sold them at local craft fairs, my voice timid at first, then stronger as women admired my work. The online store, Eleanor's Elements, was born on a shaky WordPress site. It was a laughable speck in the vast digital marketplace. I packaged orders at my kitchen table late into the night, each parcel wrapped with care. A handwritten thank you note tucked inside. It was a minuscule operation, but it was mine. For 5 years, it simply persisted, providing a modest supplement to my income and, more importantly, a purpose. The catalyst was as random as a lightning strike. An indie film actress known for her eclectic style purchased a statement necklace, a cascade of labradorite and raw silver, meant to look like a waterfall frozen in time. She wore it to a premiere. A fashion blogger snapped her. The photo went viral in certain circles, and the actress tagged my humble shop in her Instagram story with the caption, "Ancient Magic from Adeline Norselmans." My phone exploded. The website crashed. Orders poured in from London, Tokyo, Sydney. I spent 3 days in a state of delirious panic, then hired my first employee, a kind graphic design student named Layla, who helped me professionalize everything. We moved operations to a small warehouse unit. I learned about export forms, bulk purchasing, hiring a team of 5 dedicated artisans to help with production. The jewelry was still designed by my hand, each piece a story in metal and stone. But now the story found a global audience. The money, when it came, felt surreal. It wasn't just an income, it was liberation. I paid off every debt, invested wisely with a no-nonsense financial advisor named Susan, and then, with a trembling heart, began to look for a home. Not just a house, but a place where the woman I had become could finally breathe. I found it in Seabrook, a quiet coastal town hours from the city of my old life. The house was a modern interpretation of a coastal cottage, all soaring windows, bleached wood, and clean lines. It sat on a bluff, its wraparound porch seeming to hover over the dunes. The asking price was $2.1 million. I wrote a check for the deposit, my signature steady. When I collected the keys, I sat on the bare floor of the empty living room and wept, not tears of sadness, but of a profound, staggering awe. I had done this alone. I didn't announce it. I had no one to tell. My own parents were gone, my brother distant. Maya and her family were a constellation. I had long since stopped trying to navigate by. My new life was curated and calm. I swam in the cold ocean at dawn, worked in my sun-drenched studio designing new collections, walked the empty beach with a rescue terrier named Finn, and savored the deep, unbroken quiet. The ache for my daughter and grandchildren was a chronic condition, a weather system of regret that would roll in and out. But I had built a sturdy shelter against its worst storms. The doorbell's chime was a foreign sound in the late spring afternoon. Finn lifted his head from his bed in the corner, giving a soft woof. I was at my drafting table, sketches for a new ocean wave bracelet scattered around me, wearing my favorite faded green linen dress, my hair in a loose, salt-encrusted braid. I assumed it was a delivery, or perhaps my neighbor Celia, bringing over some herbs from her garden. I opened the door, and the world stopped. Time didn't just slow, it fractured, reassembling the present moment with the ghost of the past. There they stood, silhouetted against the brilliant blue of the sky and sea. Maya and Raj, 12 years had sculpted them. Maya, at 34, had lost the soft roundness of her 20s. Her face was leaner, fine lines etching the corners of her eyes and mouth. Lines put there by a life that had clearly not been without its struggles. She wore a sundress that had seen better seasons, and her hair, once a cascading brown like mine, was pulled back in a severe ponytail. Her eyes, those familiar hazel eyes, were red-rimmed and shadowed with a profound weariness. She looked defeated. Raj stood half a step behind her, a manila folder clutched in one hand, a cheap-looking gift bag dangling from the other. He had thickened around the middle, his hairline retreating. His expression was a complex map of shame, hope, and a defensive sort of calculation. The confident young architect I remembered seemed to have shrunk inside a softer, more anxious man. The silence on the doorstep was louder than the crashing surf below. I felt the coffee mug, a solid, handmade piece of pottery, warm against my suddenly cold palm. 1,000 images flashed, Maya taking her first steps, beaming up at me with dummy delight. Raj, nervous and sweet, asking for her hand in marriage at my old kitchen table. The devastating emptiness of Christmas mornings alone. Mom! Maya's voice was a cracked whisper, barely audible over the breeze. It was a sound from a lifetime ago. She winced as she said it, as if the word itself was rusty and painful in her mouth. I did not move. I did not invite them in. I simply stood, the threshold of my hard-won sanctuary, a firm line between my world and theirs. The woman who had been too much had learned the power of being still. "What brings you here today?" I asked. My voice surprised me. It was calm, measured, the voice I'd practiced for years in therapy, the voice I used when negotiating with stone suppliers or calming a distressed employee. It held no tremor, only a quiet, immense curiosity. Maya flinched as if I'd slapped her. The hoped-for tearful embrace, the immediate open arms were not materializing. Raj cleared his throat, stepping forward slightly, attempting to take charge. "Eleanor," he began, using my name. Not Mom, a conscious choice that did not go unnoticed. "It's good to see you. You look well." His eyes darted past me, taking in the soaring ceiling, the sliver of ocean view, the obvious, serene wealth. The gift bag in his hand seemed to grow heavier. We heard about this place from someone who saw a magazine feature on coastal homes. It's incredible." "Thank you," I said, my gaze not leaving Maya's face. "I'm quite fond of it." The pleasantries, brittle and absurd, hung in the air. Maya couldn't sustain them. "The dam broke." "We're in trouble, Mom," she blurted, tears spilling over. "A mess, Raj. His firm downsized 2 years ago. He's been freelancing, but it's sporadic. And I had a health scare. Benign, thank God, but the bills." She shook her head, a frantic motion. "The insurance was a nightmare. We've maxed out everything. The savings are gone. We're behind on the mortgage. Leo needs braces. Anya wants to do this summer soccer camp that might as well be a semester at college." The words tumbled out, a torrent of misfortune. Raj's jaw tightened as she spoke, his pride clearly wounded by this public audit of their failures. He placed a hand on her arm, not to comfort, but to silence her. "What Maya is trying to say," he interjected, his voice assuming a businesslike tone that was grotesque in its context, "is that we're in a temporary liquidity crisis. We're restructuring. We thought, given your new circumstances, you might be able to offer a bridge, a short-term solution." He gestured vaguely towards the interior of the house. "This place is enormous. You must have spare rooms. We could stay for a little while, a month, maybe 2, just to get our feet under us. The kids would love the beach. It would give us breathing room to sort things out. Maybe find a bigger job opportunity here." I looked from his pleading, calculating face to Maya's desperate one. The old ache, the mother love that had never died, surged up like a riptide, threatening to pull me under. My babies, my grandchildren, they need me. The instinct to fix, to provide, to shelter was a primal drumbeat in my blood, but overlaying it was the memory of 12 years of silence, of birthdays spent staring at their social media photos, blocked from commenting, of hearing about Leo's birth from a mutual acquaintance, of the echoing void where a family should have been. You didn't mean to disappear, I repeated her earlier, aborted sentiment. Life got complicated. Maya nodded eagerly, seeing a crack. Yes, exactly. It was never about you. Not really. We were just so young, so overwhelmed. Starting a family, the pressures. We just got swallowed. I took a slow sip of my coffee, buying a moment to let the steel settle back into my spine. For 12 years, Maya. You were swallowed for 12 years? Through 2 children's births, through Christmases, through every single day when a 5-minute phone call could have been made? My voice was still quiet, but it had gained an edge, like the honed rim of a seashell. You chose a path that didn't include me. You made it unequivocally clear that my presence in your life was a burden. Too much. I learned to live with that choice. Raji's face darkened. So, what? You're going to punish us now? Hold the past over our heads when we're literally about to lose our home? That's cold, Eleanor. I'm not punishing you, I said, and I meant it. There was no anger in my heart, only a vast, weary clarity. I'm stating a fact. Trust was broken. A relationship was severed. You can't appear after a decade of radio silence and expect to pick up a spare key to my life because you've read the real estate listing. Maya's desperation twisted into something uglier. We're family. You always preach that family sticks together no matter what. Where was all this boundary talk when I was a kid and you needed to be involved in every little detail of my life? The old wound throbbed. She was right, of course. I had been overbearing, living vicariously through her after her father left, seeking in her achievements the validation I'd lost. My love had been a clumsy, needy thing. I had driven her away, acknowledging that it had been the brutal work of 1,000 therapy sessions. I was wrong then, I said, the admission leaving me feeling strangely light. My love was suffocating. I see that now. And you were right to set a boundary. But the boundary you set was exile. And you have to understand that exile works both ways. You can't end a sentence and then be shocked years later that the other person stopped waiting for you to finish it. I looked past them, out to the horizon where the sea met the sky in a seamless, infinite line. I'm glad you're here, I said, and it was a partial truth. Their presence, however painful, was a form of closure, a chance to speak my piece. But this house is mine. I earned every nail, every pane of glass, every moment of this piece alone. I am not a hotel. I am not an ATM. I am your mother. But that title alone isn't a blank check. Not anymore. Raj threw his hands up. So what's the solution? We just go back to our sinking ship? Is to start building a real relationship, not one based on crisis and convenience. If you want me in your life and in Leo and Anya's lives, then we start from scratch. We meet for coffee. We talk on the phone. We have real, honest, painful conversations about the past and what we want for the future. We build trust, brick by painful brick, and then maybe help. The kind that doesn't breed resentment becomes possible. Maya stared at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. The script in her head, apology, immediate rescue, happy reconciliation, was in tatters. You want us to earn it? She asked, disgust in her voice. I had to earn this, I said, my gesture encompassing the house, the view, the peace. After you left, I had to earn a reason to get out of bed. I had to earn a career, a purpose, a self that wasn't defined by your absence. Yes, you have to earn your way back in. That's how respect works. The silence that followed was charged with the collapse of their hopes. The gift bag, which undoubtedly held some thoughtless token, hung limply from Raj's hand. Maya's face crumpled, not into soft tears, but into a mask of bitter betrayal. The mother heart in me spasmed, but the woman I had become stood firm. "I'll be in town for the next week," I said finally, my tone offering a slender thread. "My number is the same. If you'd like to have coffee, just call. I would like to see Leo and Anya very much, but it will be on neutral ground. Here. This is my home. It's not a refuge for a crisis I wasn't allowed to see brewing." Raj's shoulders slumped in defeat. He took Maya's elbow. "Come on." This was a mistake. Maya yanked her arm away, her eyes burning into mine. "You've changed," she spat, echoing Raj's earlier, quieter accusation. "I had to," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't wait to see them leave. I closed the door. The solid, smooth oak met the frame with a soft, definitive thud. It wasn't a slam of anger. It wasn't a gesture of revenge. It was a simple, profound act of preservation. I was protecting the life I had built, the peace I had earned, the woman I had become. Leaning against the door, I let out a shuddering breath. Finn nuzzled my hand. From the large window in the living room, I watched them walk back down the crushed shell path to their Cara, dented sedan with a peeling bumper sticker. Their bodies spoke of dejection, of a plan utterly failed. Raj threw the gift bag into a scrubby dune, grass patch before getting in the driver's seat. A part of me, the part that was eternally mom, shattered. It howled in grief. It wanted to fling the door open, run after them, promise them anything, everything. Just to see my grandchildren, just to have my daughter look at me without that hardened hate. The pain was physical, a vice around my ribs. But another part, the part that had swum in the cold dawn ocean alone, that had built a company from a kitchen table, the ocean continued its eternal work. Waves rolling in, breaking on the shore, receding, steady, unbothered, a force of nature that could not be, swayed by apology or crisis. And as I stood there, the late afternoon sun painting the walls gold, I realized a profound truth. The door I had closed wasn't just on them. It was on the desperate, needy woman I had been. It was on the expectation. That family was an obligation that overrode all personal sovereignty. It was on the belief that my worth was tied to their approval. The door was shut, and for the first time in 12 years, the silence behind it wasn't a punishment. It was a choice. It was peace. I picked up my coffee cup, now lukewarm, and walked back to my studio. The sketches for the wave bracelet awaited. The sea outside my window continued its indifferent, beautiful dance. I picked up my pencil. The line I drew was clean, confident, and mine alone.